For joined by Lue Elizondo, former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program at the Department of Defense, and our military analyst, Colonel Stephen Ganyard. And Mr. Elizondo, let me begin with you. Your program studied the national security implications of unidentified aerial phenomenon. Based on what you know, do you believe these sightings are evidence of alien visitors?
Well, George, there's certainly evidence of something. We know that whatever it is in our skies is real. The question is, what is it? And of course, that you can go down the rabbit hole, or we can look at it from a foreign adversarial perspective. The bottom line is we simply don't know. What we know is that whatever these aircraft are displaying beyond next generation capabilities. And I think what's concerning from a national security perspective, they can outperform anything that we have in our inventory.
But what do you say to those skeptics like Mick West, who've posted YouTube videos that they say demonstrate more mundane explanations, things like balloons, drones, even the blinking lights of a 737?
Yeah, I'd say remain skeptical, but I would also say that keep in mind that when we see a video being released online, a lot of times there's eyewitness testimony coming in from the pilots, who, by the way, are trained observers, who are actually witnessing much more than the maybe 5 or 10 seconds you see on video. And then there's also radar data. So when you have something like that, obviously you're dealing with something that's not an effect of or an artifact of the camera. You're dealing with a real object. And let's not forget that there's other video footage as well that's taken at the same time from different angles. So I think we have to be very careful coming up with a prosaic explanation without having all the facts in front of us.
Steve, what's your take on this? How should we be thinking about these sightings?
Well, I think it's intriguing, frankly, George. I think if the Navy videos have some things that we've never seen before, have never been out in the public. Normally with UFOs, you'll see a picture, a grainy picture. You'll see a person that's these people are easily spoofed. But in this case, we have data from 3 parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. You have 4 pilots with eyeballs on. You had 2 separate radars, one in the F-18 and one in the USS Princeton, and you had infrared data, so all roughly correlated. Does that mean that they were UFOs? No, it doesn't. Does it mean that there could be a scientific explanation? Sure it does, but I do think it raises some compelling questions that ought to be addressed in a scientific and deliberate way.
You're a former Marine fighter pilot. I have to ask you, did you ever see anything you couldn't explain?
Not that would be attributable to aliens here, but I do think that we need to think about this from a perspective of science and advancing science, George. There's some conspiratorial undertones to all this that I don't think are useful. I think that anybody that's worked in the U.S. government before knows that the U.S. government is completely incapable of complex conspiracies or keeping sensational secrets. So, Washington leaks like a sieve, and if there were alien remains somewhere, it would have leaked by now. So point being that Men in Black was not a documentary.
That's a fair point. But Mr. Elizondo, let me ask you, is it fair to say that the government does know a lot more than has been released so far? And should we expect some surprises in the report?
Yeah, George, that's a great question. Whether or not we know more, I think what's fair to say is that we have a lot more data. We have a lot more information. And what we need is a robust, enduring capability to collect and analyze that data over time. And then hopefully then we can start drawing some conclusions of what these things are. I agree with the Colonel. He's absolutely right. We need to have a very fair-minded, I think a very purposeful, deliberate, scientific approach to this. And I think it needs to be a whole-of-government approach. I don't think it needs to necessarily be a Department of Defense or intelligence community-only type study. I think we need to include folks like Department of Energy and FAA and DHS, academia, and the scientific community.
And finally, Steve, we only have a few seconds left, but what are the big national security implications if indeed we do have evidence that these are alien visitors? Is there anything we can do about it?
Well, we'll see, George. You know, the U.S. military has its hands full with China and Russia and North Korea and Iran, and if the Congress wants to add the aliens to the threat list, then they have the ability to write the checks and write the statutes to make that happen. So we'll see how serious Congress is once the report is released.
Report is coming soon. Thanks very much for your insight. Thanks to both of you.